Welcome to Positive Talk Radio. We're glad you're here. I'm Kevin McDonald, your host for this grand adventure, and I thank you for joining us. You see, our mission is to create a positive, personal connection to all things with courage and love. We invite terrific guests, interesting topics, and great conversation, all in a fun, entertaining way. And we always manage to learn something, too. So I hope you will stay right where you are for this episode of Positive Talk Radio. And welcome everybody to Positive Talk Radio. My name is Kevin McDonald, but you probably know that already. Either that or you don't particularly care. One of the others. It doesn't matter because we've got a guest that I've been wanting to talk to all week long because I fit into the category that she works with a lot. And her name is Sara Zeff Geber, and she's a PhD, and she's one of the world-renowned authorities on aging and people aging alone and being single and that sort of thing. Have I misrepresented that in any way?
Not at all. That's exactly who I am and what I do.
Well, and I are one of those that is
okay.
I was married for 24 years, and the first 6 months were beautiful, and I have been decided to be single, and I'm growing older single, and that presents its own set of challenges and stuff, and we're going to talk about that today. So it's really exciting. I'm glad you're here. So the first question I'd have for you is, how'd you get into this work, and what motivated you to do this?
Well, to answer that, I have to tell you a story. I was, probably about 10 years ago, I was out having a glass of wine at a cute little bar in Silicon Valley with a friend of mine, and she was telling me about how much time she'd been spending with her elderly mother. Her mother was getting into her late 80s, and she was trying to figure it out living alone. And my friend Sandy finally convinced her that she needed to move into a safer situation, a senior community. So she was flying back and forth across the country trying to get her moved in. And Sandy wasn't the only person that I'd been hearing this from. A lot of my friends were spending a tremendous amount of time with their aging parents, doing all sorts of things for them. And after a couple glasses of wine, I looked at Sandy and I said, Sandy, you and I don't have kids. Who's going to do that for us? And of course, the answer to that is zero. And there is no answer to that, really. So at that point, and again, this was about 10 years ago, I realized that I was going to have to figure that out for myself, and that in doing so, I could probably help a lot of other people. Because there are a lot of people in that situation that either are aging totally alone because they, in a lot of cases, never got married. Some are divorced, but many never have kids. I am married, but my husband and I don't have kids. So one of us is going to predecease the other, I assume, unless we both get hit by the same bus on the same day. But we have to plan accordingly. And so I've spent the last 10 years researching how solo agers can do that.
It's interesting that you say that. One time I was with my mother, who has since passed, but we were having lunch at a Red Lobster, and there was a table in the middle, and it had like 14 older people in the middle of the table, and we saw the assisted living van was out front, so we know where they came from there. There were 12 women and 2 guys. And I think that's a major problem that we have, is that men tend to predecease their wives, and so the women end up being alone, not necessarily by choice, but by reality. And it would be helpful for them to know, because it's got to be really, really scary if you're depending upon somebody and then they're suddenly no longer there.
Absolutely. I just got done writing an article on solo aging through widowhood, and which is what happens to a lot of people. Now, initially, I defined solo aging as anyone who didn't have kids. But I quickly realized, because I got a lot of feedback and blowback, as they say, about how there were lots of people out there that had kids, but those kids lived a couple thousand miles away. They were unavailable. They had lives of their own. They weren't going to be interested in helping mom or dad with whatever need they had. And even though I have seen in so many occasions where kids fly in from all sorts of places to make sure that mom or dad is appropriately cared for and has the right place to live and whatnot, still, there are situations where kids are estranged, their kids kind of failed to thrive in some cases. So there's all sorts of situations that create solo agers. And not having children is just one of those situations. But certainly there are a lot of people aging alone, and for lots of different reasons, more women than men. Men just do tend to die earlier.
Yep, and my mother lived on Whidbey Island. Just as another quick story.
Beautiful place.
It is a beautiful place, and they had the largest growing group on the island. It was called the Widows Club. Because they kept on growing because there kept becoming more widows. As a matter of fact, one gal joined and had, when you get married again, you have to quit the club. She joined 3 different times because
wow.
She lost 3 different husbands, and then she was alone again. And for somebody that really wants to be married, see, I would prefer to be single, but for somebody that wants to be married and they can't, and they're single, and negotiating that all alone is really, really hard. I'm glad there's an advocate for you, like you, out there to help people deal with it a little bit better.
Yeah, and there's a lot to figure out, and I certainly haven't got it all figured out yet. But I have a lot of different avenues that I'm exploring, and it's it's different strokes for different folks. So I have one friend, and I jokingly accuse her of being the solo ager that isn't, but she has 4 older sisters. Now they're all in their 70s at this point, but she's the youngest. And she doesn't have kids. She never married. She was a scientist. She was off in places like the Galapagos Islands for quite a few years. But she always stayed close to her sisters and those nieces and nephews that came along. And the nieces and nephews had great times visiting her in different exotic places and working with her from time to time. Some of them even lived there for a while. So this is my friend Linda. And when she retired, she went back to this town in California where we were all raised. And she lived near her sisters and near those nieces and nephews. And she's going to be well taken care of. She's got so many people that care for her, and they're close by. So they tick all the right boxes. She's invested in them. They're invested in her emotionally, and they're nearby, and they care about her. So she's got a good, really good situation for a complete solo ager by the looks of it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it would be nice to have a bunch of folks around, but like in my case, I have one of my sons is in the military and is right now in Japan. Now he's going to go to England for probably 10 years. And so he's out of the picture. And my other son, well, let's just say he's not what I would consider to be a great caregiver type. Although he cares for me and he loves me, but it's still, it's not one of those things where he's around and that closely and stuff. So how do you teach somebody who is alone on and how do you teach them to thrive and to do well with that?
It's kind of a 3-legged stool of thriving for a solo ager, and it's all around planning, because to me, planning is the essence of being successful as a solo ager and setting yourself up for success. And of course, the earlier you start on that, the better. But that 3-legged stool is legal, financial, and social. So you need to you need to do your estate planning. Choose someone to be your power of attorney. choose someone to have your advance directive. That's kind of just like a power of attorney for healthcare. And then you also need to have a will. And well, everybody needs a will. Some people need a trust, but whatever that legal status that you want to set up for yourself so that there are people to back you up, you have like a backup plan. That's important. And then the financial is important too. And I encourage a lot of people to work with a financial planner. You know, that profession has changed a lot in the last 10 years. They are no longer trying to put you in funds that they get big kickbacks on. Most financial planners today are independent planners and work on a fee-only basis. And of course, everybody should look for someone that works on a fee-only basis. So they charge you for their time, really. And you need to know, everybody needs to know, whether you have kids or not, but everybody needs to know whether the money they have is going to last them for the rest of their life. And these days, the rest of life can easily be 100 years. So, you know, we're not going to all live to be 100, but many of us will live well into our late 80s and probably into our 90s. Every year, that expectation goes up. So, you know, we're learning how to manage all kinds of conditions and diseases, and it keeps us alive longer. So those are two. Those are the financial and the legal. The third one, the social one, I think is even the most important one. And that is having a good social support system around you. So that's something that a lot of people who are solo agers, especially people who have been solo a long time, have put together a kind of a family of choice. They have friends, they may have extended family. Sometimes siblings live close to one another and stay close all of their adult years. And if those siblings have nieces and nephews, so that's good. And it's also wonderful to supplement those with friends. And the best of all worlds is younger friends. So the extent to which you can cultivate younger friends in your world, you will have a more solid safety net. Because when you start making plans and making pacts, you know, to do for one another with people your own age, you don't know who's going to go first. I do have a number of people who have taken the advice that I'm dishing out and used it in very different ways. I know several women who have started small groups, and they're all kind of have each other's back. My friend Susan that I talked to the other day was telling me about how she had formed an alliance with another woman, and every morning they text each other just a real quick thing saying, I'm up or I'm okay. And so they have the peace of mind of knowing that if their partner doesn't receive that text, there's a problem and somebody needs to go to their house. So it's little things like that that are important. But the most important thing is really to make sure that you have that social support system around you. And if you haven't really done that yet, to look around you and figure out how you could develop and nurture a support system. Now, some people do that. People do that in different ways. A lot of people do that through their church or synagogue or mosque, because typically those kinds of institutions have groups that are already established for that kind of socializing and coming together. So that's a good place to do it. But really any places where you volunteer, places where you work, places maybe you're involved in civic kinds of activities. You may be an usher at a theater, you may have a book club, just endless kinds of situations that create opportunities for social networking.
Now, do you advocate people do, because like myself, I moved into a 55 plus mobile home community.
Love that.
I've got a home here, and then they've got a rec center and for all the folks, if you can get the folks out of the house to go to the rec center, which is the biggest challenge, that can benefit them.
Absolutely. I've become a huge, huge fan of mobile home parks, whether they're 55 plus or just open to all ages. Because here's what you have in a mobile home that you don't have in a single family home. You have people that see each other every day. There's not a lot of room in those mobile homes unless you've got a huge fancy one, and most people don't. They have a modest one, maybe, I don't know, what is yours, 30 foot, something like that?
Yeah, mine's 20 by 40, and
Yeah. So,
it's a small double wide, but
mhm.
if somebody lived with me, I'd see them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Because do you have a washer and dryer in your unit?
I do.
Okay. So some mobile home parks don't allow that, or they are set up in such a way that there are smaller mobile homes that don't have that. So everybody has to go to the common house to do their wash.
Right.
There are others. Where do you go to get your mail?
Fortunately for me, my mail's delivered here, but I know that there are some of the places where you have to go to the office, and it's
Right.
kind of a social gathering point.
It is. It is. And in our in our typical suburban neighborhoods, living on some cul-de-sac somewhere where you pull into your garage and that's the last you ever see of the front of your house. All living takes place in the back of the house. You never see your neighbors. You never have a chance to mingle and mix and kind of get to know people. But in mobile home parks, that is just different. We have some beautiful ones around here where I live. I live in Santa Rosa, California. And I watch, especially during the summertime, people gather around the pool. They have potlucks. There's a big park across the street. And sometimes I see them all going over to the park with their folding chairs, especially during COVID.
Oh yeah.
I had an interesting thing happen during COVID. This is kind of a funny story that people really seem to enjoy. I was reading the paper one morning, and this was, I don't know, 60, 80 days into the lockdown in California. So we just weren't going anywhere. And I'm reading the paper, and I'm reading about this fella in the next town over, Petaluma, for those of you that are familiar with our geography. And this fella was going out on his deck at night every evening at 8 o'clock, and he was howling. And pretty soon, neighbors in the area started howling back, just like wolves do. They're lone animals, and yet they want others to know they're there. That's how they call their mates. That's how they just say, "Hey, I'm here." So they were howling, and I thought, we could do that. So I said to my husband, "We're going to go out and howl." And he looked at me like I was a bit batty, but I convinced him, and we went out in the middle of our cul-de-sac because I didn't want to do it from our deck. I mean, nobody sees me there. But I thought if you do it where somebody can actually see you, that might have better consequences. So we went out and just, just started howling. And of course, the neighbors came out to see who those idiots were in the middle of a cul-de-sac. But pretty soon, they came out and started howling. And the howling led to a lot of fun discussions. We were out there usually, it was close to summer, so it was nice in the evenings. And we were out there always for half hour, 45 minutes. And that led to some socially distanced potlucks. And pretty soon, the engineers among our group were rigging up outdoor movie theaters. So we just had a wonderful time. And a lot of us never even knew each other before. But we're pretty tightly bonded now. And it took the pandemic to do that.
Exactly. Well, I lived in a cul-de-sac for years, and we had a couple of houses that we were familiar with and friendly with, but a lot of them just, they drive in, they have a garage door opener, it opens up, it shuts. You don't see
Yeah.
them again until they leave the next day,
Yep.
and stuff. So but this is where I live. I happen to live like on a corner, and it's kind of a hub, and there are people. I swear I could open up a hot dog stand and probably make money.
You probably could.
Doing
And
that.
have you met a lot of people?
Oh, absolutely. They're all over
Yeah.
because everybody wants to get out and walk a little
Yeah.
bit. That's what they say,
Yeah.
and a lot of them will have either a dog or a cat,
Yeah.
and they're even cats on leashes and stuff. So it's it,
Well,
but the social aspect is so important because as you get older and you hurt a little bit and you can't move as well, you tend to want to stay home, but you've got to. I'm a huge advocate of having a hobby, of having something to occupy your time
Absolutely.
and your mind with.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So
Well,
it's
Kevin, you
really
seem to, you've got this pretty well dialed in.
well, for me, it's working really quite well because I've got the financial. Because where I live, and by the way, if you don't know, mobile homes tend to be a little bit less than a stick house, and they're a little bit easier to get into, and you might rent the spot you're on, but it costs less, and you can on a fixed income you can live here much better than like an apartment or like they've
Yeah,
got some of these apartments for seniors, but you're not in control of anything. You're not in control of the rent and stuff. And if you're on a fixed income, $50 a month means something.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, I'm a huge fan of mobile home parks. I'm a fan of any kind of community that brings people together. Now, some people want to live somewhere where they're mingling with all different generations, and that's great. And some people would rather just have the peace and quiet of knowing that everybody's 55 plus, which in most places means they're 65, 70 plus.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm 64, so I am the younger
You're one of
guy.
the younger. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's fine. I mean, and I have a friend that lives here as well, and he makes it a mission of himself to go make sure that people that are staying home and don't feel like they can get out, that he makes sure they have enough food and
Oh,
stuff.
great.
And he'll invite them over for a movie and popcorn or whatever, and it's really good for us to do that for each other, because it's like my mom, she had her own house, but and she died recently, and she died at 90, and she just fell asleep, but she had friends because it was on
Mm-hmm.
Whidbey Island, and she had friends that she was playing bridge with that day and stuff, and they came over and they found her. So she wasn't there for like, what can happen.
Yeah.
It's a long time
Yeah.
once you go. So, but I think it's really important. I love the work that you're doing. I think it's really important. If somebody wants to find out more about what you're doing and the courses that you're working with and stuff, how do they find you?
Well, they find me on my website, which is sarazeffgeber.com. Really easy. You can, if you're interested in solo aging, now usually I there we go, put a book around here. If you're interested in solo aging, I think a really good place to start is to buy a copy of my book, Essential Retirement Planning
for Solo Agers.
Solo Agers.
Perfect.
Yeah. And it's available in a lot of bookstores, a lot of libraries, but of course also through Amazon and Barnes & Noble and some of the online sellers as well. It's a great way to get started thinking about how you're going to manage your own solo aging.
I mean, it's really hard. And so I'm going to bring up a word, and you know this word well. It's called a fiduciary. And that is a planner. And if you go ask a planner what kind of planner they are, they're required by law to tell you
Mm-hmm.
if they are working on behalf of a particular company that has got instruments that they're trying to push, or if they are working on your behalf and they take like a percent or a percent and a half a year or something, or whatever that is. Is that how you would encourage somebody to find their financial footing?
Yeah, absolutely. The word fiduciary means that person who calls himself a fiduciary must put your interest before their own. That's what the word means. So all financial planners have to subscribe to being fiduciaries. I mean, they have so many licenses that they have to juggle and maintain. And through all of that, they have to certify that they are fiduciaries. And now, again, it's those fee-only financial planners or financial advisors. That's what you want to look for, because they're the ones that not only are fiduciaries, but you know that they're not going to charge you for anything other than their time with you. the fees that they charge, their time, and they take a certain percentage of the monies that you have invested. So you don't have to stay with a financial planner and work with them for years. Lots of people do, but I encourage everyone to at least visit a financial planner that's been well recommended at least once, so that you can give that person the information they need to plug into these programs that they have that will help you understand whether the money that you've saved, the money you're making, the money you have in retirement plans, they just plug those things into this algorithm, and you'll know in minutes whether you're on the right track to lead a good life until you're 97 or whatever number you agree to plug in there, or whether you need to make some adjustments. And sometimes people need to make some adjustments to their lifestyle because their money isn't going to last. So isn't it good to know that? I think everybody should probably want to know that.
Oh yeah. And my sister has a financial planner, and he built their portfolio out to age 100.
Yeah.
That they can be, but the downside in his world is he's not going to let you break that pledge by spending outside of what you're allowed to spend. So they complain every now and then, is my financial planner won't give me any money.
Won't let me go on vacation.
Exactly, because he's looking out after their best interest to make sure that if they so happen to live that long, that they don't end up on somebody's doorstep.
Yeah, I think he's a good guy. I used to listen to an elder law attorney, and he used to come and lecture every now and then. I used to belong to a financial planning association, even though I am not a financial planner at all. But I find that they make good partners for what I do. So I belong to the nearby chapter where I lived down in Silicon Valley. And he used to come and talk to us every couple of years, and he'd always say, you just don't want to be eating cat food in your son's basement. That was his watchword. You don't want to eat cat food in your son's basement.
That's enough to scare anybody.
Yeah.
Because you've worked hard your entire life, and you want the long-term end years to be well, and for you to feel good about yourself and try and stay healthy and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though as we get older, it's harder. I wanted to ask you a question about one of the things that is coming into focus in my life, even at 64, and that is the reality that not all of us are destined to live as long as some of us others are, and there's a point in time when it seems like everybody is dying. How do you work with people to get through that?
You mean the people who are dying, or the ones that are leaving behind?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Say that again.
Do you mean how do I work with people who are dying, or the ones that they're leaving behind?
No, the ones that are still here, but all their friends seem to be dying, and so their circle of friends are getting smaller, and they're going away. That makes it really tough.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I encourage people to do is to look at their lives, excuse me, and look at the people around them as kind of an ever-changing circle. And that to really continue to have a good set of friends, as I like to call it, a social network, means you have to kind of keep putting those friends in the top of the funnel, because some of them are going to fall out the bottom every year. It's true. I mean, you know how the Royals have this expression, they need an heir and a spare? Well, we need friends and we need spares. So keep on cultivating friendships with people. Because as everybody knows who has cultivated friendships, which I hope that's everyone, it doesn't happen overnight. When I moved up to Santa Rosa, one of the things I did right away was I joined a book club. So there's 8 of us, and we didn't. None of us knew each other. But after several years, I feel really close to a lot of those women. And a couple of them are 15, 20 years younger than me. And I'm thinking at this point, 5 years into it, I could ask one of those women to be on my advance directive or power of attorney. It's not out of the realm of thinking. So, they're all bright, intelligent women, and they know what I do, and they understand the cause that I'm championing. So, but that's what it takes. You need to keep on cultivating friends. And a lot of people sort of rest on their laurels and say, I've got these two besties that I've known for 35 years, and we all still get together for lunch, and we drive to the next town to meet, and we go on vacations together, and that's all great. But that doesn't last forever. Not just because one of you may die, but because there comes a time in your life when you're not going to be as mobile. You're not going to be able to drive to that next town for lunch. You're not going to be able to spend as much, maybe spend as much money on vacations or take those vacations with your friends. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. Maybe you will be able to continue to do that. But it always scares me to hear people saying that they're putting all their eggs in a basket that lives 2,000 miles away. So
Exactly.
there's so many aspects of this.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to touch on with you is, and I think it's pretty important, is everybody that gets to be older is used to having a certain amount of freedom, and one of the major freedoms that you have is being able to drive an automobile.
Yeah.
And there's a point in time when that ceases to be a good idea.
Yes.
That happened to my mom when the fender benders started to come in, and the bills from the fix-it shops were growing and stuff, and it was becoming apparent that we were going to have to step in. How do you advocate? That's a horrible conversation to have with somebody. How do you advocate dealing with that?
Everybody's different. Everybody's parent is different. But I hate to say wait until something happens and then, strike while the iron is hot and say, I think it's time you gave me the keys, Dad. Because in a very real way, you don't want to wait till something happens, because there's going to very likely be other people involved. My father actually drove into a wall when he was somewhere, actually still in his 70s. And that was the wake-up call that he needed to give up the keys, at least for driving at night. But it's tough. I mean, it's tough to have that conversation. I am a non-fan, especially for solo agers, of aging in place. I'm battling AARP for years on this, because AARP did some research, again, about 10, 12 years ago, and discovered that 80-something% of all older adults want to age in place. Well, if you're a solo ager, in many ways, that's just dumb. Why would you want to put yourself in a situation where something may happen to you and nobody might find you for days? So that doesn't mean you have to move into senior housing, although there are some lovely communities out there which meet kind of the middle level and the upper level of income. But there are places like mobile home parks where, again, people watch out for one another. There are 55 plus mobile home parks. There are increasingly ways to hook up with people that, I shouldn't use that expression these days, to get together with, find other people to live with. Home sharing has become huge.
Well, there's nothing wrong with older people hooking up either.
That's true. That's true. But in this context, I just meant find somebody to live with. So, you may have a big house that you're rambling around in. Why not rent out a bedroom or two? A la the Golden Girls. That worked out well for them. You're not going to fall in love with the person that you move in or whose home you move into. You're not going to fall in love with them right away, but respect each other's boundaries and be interested in each other's lives. And, that affection and caring grows. So there's just all kinds of different ways. I mean, I'm a big fan of co-housing and any kind of co-living situation. I'm just not a very big fan of aging in place.
Well, then the problem with, I assume when you mean aging in place is just sitting in your on your
Right.
recliner and watching TV. Um,
Well, it's more than that. I mean, when I say aging in place, I mean aging in that 2 or 3 story suburban home that you've lived
oh
in for
yeah.
40 something years, um, all by yourself.
How, you
So,
can't take care of it by yourself,
no,
and
you
you
can't.
can't, and especially one of the biggest issues that us, which is why I'm glad that you advocate mobile home parks, is the problem of stairs as you're getting older.
Yes, yes. Very few 80 something year olds are fans of stairs. Um, I mean, my husband has very bad knees. He's had several knee surgeries. And we knew when we bought this most recent house that it couldn't have stairs. So, and it's hard. It's in some areas, especially areas that are hilly. It's sometimes a challenge to find single level homes, smaller single level homes. But sometime in the next decade of our lives, we'll be moving into some kind of senior living community. So that's what we've decided to do. People have all kinds of different decisions to make in that regard, but you know, sitting in that sitting in that home with the big yard and the deck and all those leaves falling that need to be raked and snow that needs to be shoveled and all of that, it's just not smart.
No, you know, and I I wanted to ask you, older folks, how many of them play bridge? Because none of the younger kids play bridge, so they've got to be. It's that's a game that's kind of going away with that generation.
Yeah, I guess so. When I talk to baby boomers these days, and even when I listen to myself, um, I don't want to sit around and play bridge or mahjong. I want to be out there doing something. As long as I can get out of my home, my apartment, or wherever I'm living, I'm going to be out there volunteering. I'm going to be out there doing something. I want my life to have more meaning and purpose than a bridge game or two every week. That is not my idea of growing older. And I'll tell you more and more when I talk to baby boomers that it's not for them. This is the challenge of getting baby boomers to move into some kind of senior living environment or something a little more social than their home in the suburbs is that they think that they're going to end up sitting in the recliner watching TV, and that's death. I mean, you want to
Right.
move into a situation where there are lots and lots of other opportunities.
Well, and the cool thing with it's like those 14 ladies that went to Red Lobster.
Yeah,
That was a outing that they had planned for a while, and so
yeah,
they all got together, got into the van that so somebody else was driving and waited for them and stuff. And the senior communities now they actually have activity directors, so that they've got lots of activities for the people to do. Then all they have to do is get
yeah.
out of their little apartment and go do them.
Don't do them. And there are people that even don't want that. They want to be able to be more in charge of their own lives. There are people now that are moving into senior communities that still are running their own companies. They're
Yeah.
still working, and they want to work until they absolutely can't work anymore. And that's probably going to be me. I don't know about you, Kevin, but I don't want to give up the things that add meaning and purpose to my life. Why would I?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because I was a bus driver for a number of years, like 12 or 14 years, no, 12 years, and I had to retire. I'm 64, and I fell a couple of times and had to have some surgery, and so that's. But now this is what I do. This love doing this.
Hmm.
I do podcasts. I've got 4 different ones. I've got a couple of shows on AM radio in Seattle. So I'm very, very busy doing this, but it's not like I'm working at all. It's just
We should
in just
have.
Yes, and I
More than
look,
fun.
yeah, exactly. And then I look at what happened to my dad, because my dad worked for, and this, I tell me if this happens to a lot of folks, because I suspect it does, at least in the older generation. He worked for 40 years for Nordstrom's. He was an executive with them, a high powered guy. He was one of those guys that when he would go to their department, they'd say, "Oh, Mr. McDonald's coming, Mr. So he had a great deal of power, and he had a great deal of prestige, and he was they have an award. It's called the John W. Nordstrom Award, and he won that award. So he had a great, and then he retired, and then he had nothing. Nobody said Mr. McDonald anymore. Nobody asked his advice. Nobody asked his opinion. And so he decided he was going to go play golf. And so he joined a country club, and he turned that into his job. He'd go have
Hmm.
breakfast there, then they'd play around the golf, then they'd come back and play cards until 5 or 6 o'clock, and then he'd go home and that worked for him and my mom, because they weren't used to seeing a lot of each other. So it worked. Everybody could have their own space. But as
Hmm.
he got older, and he couldn't play golf anymore to the degree, then he had nothing else, and he wouldn't he wouldn't find anything else. He wouldn't volunteer. He got set in his ways, so he ended up sitting on the couch, and that's what did him in.
Yeah, that'll kill you.
It will, and
Yeah,
you got to keep active. You got to keep your mind active and moving and stuff, and it's important.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's wonderful to have kind of not role models, but we've seen those sorts of models, and we don't want to follow that. We want to do something different. We want to make sure that we've got things that we do that don't depend on our maybe our physical ability to do them. Things that we're interested in the mind, reading and making and listening to podcasts. And these days, you can be in groups of people that meet online, and you never meet physically, but you have that companionship of the online. And when, gosh, the one thing COVID has done for us is to show us how powerful that is.
Oh
So,
yes.
yeah, I really encourage people to think about that, because a lot of us saw our parents do that, just sort of fade away to nothingness, where they were sitting in that recliner 10 hours a day watching TV. And, oh,
There's only
yeah,
so much
got to
Judge
plan
Judy you
differently.
can. Yep, there's only so
Yeah,
much Judge Judy you can watch. Um,
that's right.
but it's it's and what if you are older and you're listening to this, or you know somebody that's older listening to this, Zoom and some of the other products are very easy to get on, and you can develop a real close relationship with someone, and not physically be in their same place, but look at each other's eyes, and see each other, and stuff. And so I highly advocate that for
Yeah.
folks that can't drive anymore, that can't get out and stuff. That's a great sector. That's a great another option.
A couple of groups that I'm familiar with, and I suspect there are more out there. These are just the two that I know that formed during COVID to totally be a community for older adults online.
Perfect.
And they happen to be, one happens to be located on the West Coast, one's located on the East Coast, but it doesn't matter because everything they do is online. So one is called Amava, AMAVA, and the other is called Vitality Society. And I always like to sing the praises of both of them, because that's a great way to meet an interesting group of men and women, predominantly women, but men do participate as well. For both of those groups, I have led some solo aging discussions, and I continue to do that on an ongoing basis. And I have a regular cadre of 15 to 20 women that come to each of our sessions. I do it once a month. I think we're going to back off to once every other month. But oh my gosh, these organizations have so much else going on. Everything from a number of different workout classes to book clubs to lectures to dance to, I mean, you name it. They've figured out how to do it online.
I think that's awesome. Well, Sarah, if somebody wants to get a hold of you and to pick your brain about how they can help the ones that they love who are getting older and are single, how they can help them out, how do they get in touch with you again?
Again, it's sarazeffgeber.com. They can see my name, right?
Yep, they can see
And I
it
can
right
see my
in
name.
front. Yes, yes, ma'am. And
Yeah,
I
just
can't.
take out the spaces and add a .com, and you've got it.
That's perfect. So, what do you got? You got plans for the holidays? You doing a bunch of stuff?
Yeah, we're getting together with friends for Thanksgiving, and then we're gonna go down and visit some cousins down in San Diego over the Christmas holiday. So yeah, we're pretty dialed in for that.
Keep it busy, keep it going. And
Yeah.
by the way, we've been talking with Sara Zeff Geber, and you can go to her website, which is of the same name. And she's got a book there that you can buy the book, and you can order the book from Amazon or other places. You can also get it from her website, I assume.
Well, actually, I just have an Amazon link on my website. It just makes it so much easier. I don't want to be in the book shipping business.
I don't blame you. So go to Amazon, and the name of the book again is, for reference,
Essential Retirement Planning for Solo Agers.
And there are more and more and more of us, because after I got divorced, I like to say I haven't had a date since 1980, which is actually true. But
well, I didn't interject with any of the statistics, but there are some really interesting statistics out there about the number of people that are solo agers. And of the baby boom generation, which I suspect most of your listeners are part of, certainly you and I are, Kevin.
Yep.
Almost 20% of baby boomer women did not have kids. So that's huge.
That is big.
Yeah.
That is big, which means that there's nobody there to come save you. I mean, if I had a daughter, it would have been easy. But I got two sons, and they're busy doing their own thing. You know what I mean? And so
daughters are better when it comes to caregiving. There's no doubt.
And they want to hang around their old folks too. So my son's is like, Dad, I don't think so. In any event, it's been great talking to you, and I want to thank you very much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Kevin, for inviting me on.
Now, if you'll hold on right there, I'll be right back. I've got to do this, and then I'll be right back.
Okay.
Hey, and thanks for listening to this episode all the way to the end. Hey, pretty cool. Hey, don't forget to follow us so you can receive regular updates and new posts. And remember, take care of each other, because each other's all we've got. See you next time on My Independence Report.